All right, guys, how's it going? It is Mark Zolo here, aka the Naughty Nomad, and welcome to my Sunday show. Today, I'm talking about Africa, and in particular, going to be giving advice to guys who are interested in maybe traveling to Africa for the first time. I know this isn't exactly the best time to be talking about travel, but I know a few guys who are actually over there now and they're having a blast. Yeah, and I've gotten this question quite a lot. You know, people travel to Southeast Asia and Latin America, but not a lot of people go exploring Africa, and it's my favorite continent. And I thought I'd be a bit more organized today. So please leave your questions till the end because I actually have a presentation for you. I have a nice wee, we see here now. All right. It's my first time doing one of these, but I'm very organized for you guys today. And I'll just tell you what we'll be going through today. We're going through quite a lot, and hopefully this will give you a good breakdown of the whole continent. I'm going through every region here. I'm going to be giving you guys trip ideas and discussing various things throughout the continent. So let's just go for a little breakdown here of what we're covering today. And here we go. Right, so, sorry guys, first time doing this. We'll get the hang of this eventually. All right. So today we're going to be discussing, so what makes for a good country? You know, there's 54 countries in Africa. So I'll be going through what criteria I think is important for those who are interested in traveling to Africa for the first time. If you really want to have a good time, what is important? And then I will be giving a breakdown of all the various regions, as well as, you know, breaking down different countries as well, my favorite countries. And also, finally, I'll be giving some trip ideas, some itineraries, some route planning. So that's kind of what the meat of the meat of the presentation today is, guys. And if you have any questions about any countries during the presentation, please let me know. I will try to get them at the end, or if they're relevant to what I'm showing, I will answer them then and there. So let's get back into it, eh? All right, so first of all, so what makes a good trip? I said there's so much choice in Africa. There's 54 countries. Now, just for those of you guys who don't know, I have been to 20 countries in Africa. I've traveled every region. I've been there on 5 trips. And I've also written 2 books which cover Africa extensively, which would be my first book, Naughty Nomad, and my latest book, My Life as a Mexican Pirate. So in terms of good trip ideas, I definitely think that the first thing you need to consider is safety and ease of travel. A lot of Africa is very, very difficult to travel in. You know, you can be shoved in the back of a 5-seater car for 70 hours if you plan it wrong. You know, some parts, especially Central Africa and West Africa, can be very, very tough, or the Sahel, the Sahara. Whereas if you go to the east and south, it's just things are a little bit easier. If you go to South Africa, obviously, they have much better infrastructure. They're also much better set up for tourism. And there's a lot more things for tourists as well. And some countries are better than others, as we'll go through in the list next. So also that covers things to see and do. Some countries are richer than others. Some places have tons to see and tons to do, where you could basically just focus on that one country for your whole trip. Whereas others are terrible. You want to avoid them at all costs. And finally, fun and nightlife, guys. This wouldn't be Naughty Nomad unless we're talking about nightlife, a bit of crack, the girls and all that stuff. So I want you all to have a good time. Okay, so yes, going into the next thing here is, all right, we're going to break down now the different regions of Africa. So as you can see here on the map, we have 5 different regions, and this is generally what is considered the main regions of Africa. According to the UN and or according to the African Union, and also culturally, this is a good grouping, I find. So obviously we got North Africa. And let's be honest, guys, when we think of Africa, I'm sure when you clicked on this link, you weren't thinking of, you know, Aladdin and Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. You're thinking more like, Black Panther. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm not really going to be focusing on the northern region because they're mostly Arabic. Culturally, if you're above the Sahara, it's just a different buzz. It feels more like the Middle East. But if you are going to travel there, I've been to Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco. I highly recommend Morocco. I have a men's guide to Morocco on my website, naughtynomad.com. I'll try and leave it on the show links. Yeah, Morocco is amazing. Really recommend you check it out. But we're not going to be covering it in this presentation because, as I said, North Africa isn't really Africa when you think about it in the conventional sense. Next, also, then we got West Africa. Now, West Africa is a bit more adventurous. I've traveled from Dakar in Senegal all the way to Lagos, Nigeria, every country on the coast. And it can be pretty rough in some places. It can be pretty rough. I'm talking, you could be spending 2 days in the back of a van, kind of rough. And there's not a lot of tourist infrastructure. A lot of people don't visit West Africa. When most people go to Kenya or South Africa, so it's not really well set up for tourists. Notable exceptions being Ghana here, which is quite popular, and also Gambia and Senegal, which is very popular with tourists from Europe. Gambia being English speaking attracts a lot of English speakers, and Senegal being popular with the French. Now, personally, in West Africa, my favorites are Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and maybe Guinea. They're my top 3, I'd say. But I honestly wouldn't recommend these places for first timers. They can be a bit dodgy, but maybe for your second trip, I consider it, but not for first timers. And just a little comment here. We got Chef Chouam was a blast. This is a comment here from Sebi Boy XYZ. He's talking about this place. There's a place in Morocco. In Morocco, there's a town called Chef Chouam where it's basically like a hash town. All the Rift Mountains where they grow the hash for the European markets, you can get it up here in the mountains area. Morocco is fantastic. But anyway, so that's kind of north and west. I'm not going to be including these for first timers. I wouldn't recommend these regions for first timers. They just can be a little bit tough. And as much as there is to see in Ghana, Senegal, and Gambia, there's better things to be seen in this part of the continent. Another area I definitely won't be covering is Central Africa. So Central Africa is definitely the most dangerous part of Africa. Almost no tourists go there. I mean, we're talking about Chad, where you might know that from Darfur, the war there. Congo, not exactly known for being a peaceful place either. I've been to DR Congo, and let me tell you, it was one of the most dangerous places I've been in my life. Anyone who's read my first book will read all the trouble we got into in Eastern Kivu here. Central African Republic, again, not known for its as a bastion of liberty. Right. So, and also, again, guys, these all speak mainly French. There's language barriers here. With the exception of maybe Equatorial Guinea, it's a tiny little country. I don't think it's even on the map there. They speak Spanish, but there's also a language barrier here. And it's very difficult to travel. Very difficult to travel. So definitely for first timers, this is like advanced here. Central Africa. Definitely wouldn't recommend it. Which brings us to East Africa. Now, East Africa, things start to get a bit more interesting. It's safe. There is a ton to see and do. I mean, and everyone speaks English. And usually when you see those pictures of Africa, the safaris, Mount Kilimanjaro, the beautiful waterfalls, white beaches, East Africa is where you're usually looking at. So that's definitely a place I'll be focusing on when I recommend my trip ideas later. And then finally, there's the southern part of Africa, which is South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, and Swaziland. Actually, Swaziland is called the Kingdom of Eswatini now. Eswatini, I think. Yeah. So again, that's even more developed again than East Africa because it's near South Africa. There's great infrastructure, plenty of things to do. So mainly for today, we will be focusing on the east and the south. That said, I will be giving other recommendations for other potential trip ideas that are a bit out of the woodwork you may not expect. Okay, so moving on, and just to echo home this point, the next slide, as you'll see, here's the languages of Africa. So English is spoken in 25 different countries. French is spoken in 21 countries. So French is very, very useful for Africa. And I recommend anyone who's interested in learning French to pick up Pimsleur French. That's what I used. I did 2 months of that, and I was going on dates in West Africa. Really, really recommend it. Other languages that are spoken, it's Arabic, obviously, in 10 countries. In fact, I believe it's understood in more countries there, like the whole Sahel region, which is the central part here, as you can see on the map. Those countries tend to have Arabic as a second language. As you can see there, the brown indicates a mixture of Arabic and French. The one country that speaks Spanish is Equatorial Guinea. And then Portuguese is also quite useful as well. I mean, they speak it in Angola, Guinea-Bissau here, Mozambique. And you can't see it on the map there, but they also speak it on Santau and Principe. It's an islands off the coast of Central Africa here. And there's also the islands of Cape Verde, which is over here off the coast of the West Africa. Over here. Bingo. And that's actually I think it's the only medium developed country in the whole of Africa. So, sorry, I'm drinking beer. I'm a terrible streamer. So other major languages is Swahili, spoken mainly in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and also Congo. Amharic, which is the main language of Ethiopia. You'll notice there, Ethiopia, it's in a different shade there. But you know, a lot of them speak English as well. And then the Nigerian languages, think about this, 1 in 5 Africans are Nigerian, believe it or not. There's like 200 million people living in Nigeria. So their major languages like Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, they constitute major populations of people speaking those languages. Also, you have like tribes like the Fulani tribe throughout West Africa, which I think Fulani is similar to Hausa. So that's spoken in several countries across the region. But in general, though, realistically, you can get away with these European languages. I mean, English and French. I have a bit of Arabic as well, but to be honest, in the Arabic countries, most of them speak French as well. So French is the #1 language to learn if you're going to learn another language. And also, there's 1,500 to 2,000 languages in Africa. Think about that. It's pretty crazy, huh? Anyway, just a little comment there. How you doing? Matt, Zimbabwean friend of mine is trying to sell me in Africa, given that most African countries have lifted travel restrictions. Yes, I have a friend who spent the last couple of months there, Matt. The guy I used to do my Hangover Radio podcast with, he spent months traveling through Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia during the lockdown, and he had a blast. So there's a lot of places that are open now in Africa that people can go visit. Yes. So anyway, so now we'll go into our trip ideas. This is the good stuff, right? Now, this is the first trip, not necessarily the best, but definitely the first trip I'd recommend to people for your first time in Africa. The classic Eastern trek. Now, I've also added to this as well. So the addition being Uganda. So this encompasses Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. And I recommend around 2 to 4 weeks for this, and I give this a trip rating of 4 out of 5. The only reason why I don't give it a full 5 out of 5, you'll see when you compare it to the next trip I give, which is a 5 out of 5. And also, this is quite touristy, I suppose. But guys, touristy in Africa is not really touristy at all, just so you know. You can go to parts of Tanzania and parts of Kenya, and you won't see another foreigner for days. But then again, if you go in high season and you do safaris, you're going to be queuing up with several 4x4s to try and snap a line that doesn't have a picture of another 4x4 in it. So it can get very, very touristy in parts. So the highlights of there's a couple of reasons why I recommend this little trip here, because there's so much great variety. If we're starting here over in Zanzibar, Zanzibar used to be an Omani settlement, Oman being the Middle East. So the Stone Town, the capital's got these wonderful mazy Arabic streets, but then you go to these beautiful white beaches. I mean, I'm talking crystal clear white beaches. I'll show it in the next slide what I'm talking about, but really idyllic. And you spend your nights there, all the little hostels and hotels. They light bonfires, people playing guitars, drinking cocktails. Beautiful place to spend a week now. I'm talking. I spent a week just in Zanzibar. And then right beside Zanzibar here is Dar es Salaam. It's probably the major city in Tanzania. So that's good for nightlife to break it up. And up here is Mount Kilimanjaro, the largest mountain in Africa. Again, I have this on the next slide. Beautiful place. You can also do safari around here. You got the Serengeti, which is the best place for safari, of course. Now, you can do this in either Tanzania or Kenya. The Masai Mara tribe, which is the most famous, I believe, is in Kenya. That's where I did it, my one. And yeah, highly recommended. There's a few options. Do check it out. Of course, then you got Nairobi, the wild capital of Kenya. Now, guys, Nairobi is pretty dodgy. It can be pretty dodgy. It's not the worst, but compared to other African cities in general, it is one of the dodgier ones. But the nightlife there is wild, and guys, you can have some serious fun in Nairobi. But even better is Kampala in Uganda, which is something I really, really, really strongly recommend you check out. Kampala is probably my favorite. Uganda in general is one of my favorite countries in Africa. And Kampala, compared to, let's say, Kenyans, Ugandans are just friendlier, warmer. They're a bit more relaxed. And my friend who I mentioned earlier, who was traveling around Africa, he's been to Uganda, I think 3 or 4 times. He moved there for a time because it's his favorite country in Africa. And also, you're right by Lake Victoria there. You can do whitewater rafting in Jinja, kayaking. It's a beautiful place. And then further down towards Rwanda, you got gorilla trekking. You got beautiful mountains. And also, if you wanted to add on, you could pop into Rwanda if you have a bit of French. Rwanda is extremely well developed now. You'd be shocked how nice Rwanda is. So that's a nice little add-on as well. I never got to make it down to Burundi. It's hard to get the visa. But I did go to Rwanda. I even went into Goma here in Congo, but I believe it's very difficult now. I said, guys, I'll get your questions at the end. And we can go through whatever you like. Okay, so that is the first trip recommendation I can give to you guys. Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of what I was talking about as well. Actually, let me just pull these up. So yeah, here we have, this is obviously Mount Kilimanjaro, some beautiful elephants in the foreground. We got Zanzibar Beach, just around the beach of Zanzibar, the gorilla trekking, as I mentioned, Uganda, and that's from the whitewater rafting. Guys, and the whitewater rafting, well, I did. I don't know if it's like that anymore because I think they built it down. But the whitewater rafting in Uganda was one of the best experiences of my life. It was serious rafting, like dangerous, exciting, thrilling. Highly recommended. Yeah, all right. So let's move on, shall we? So this is the second trip idea I have for you. This is, sorry, 1 second. Let me just, went ahead of myself there. Okay, the Southern John. So starting in Zambia, we have Victoria Falls up here by the Zimbabwe border. Sorry, let me just go through what countries we're covering in it first. This is Zambia, Namibia, and South Africa. So 2 to 4 weeks I recommend for this. And this is a 5 out of 5 rating. So starting in Zambia with Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls is probably the most beautiful place I have been to in my life. Now, that was quite some time ago. That was 14 years ago. Whoa, God, I'm getting old. 14 years ago, but it was the best memory I have of a place in my life. Absolutely wonderful. And then there's transport directly from here to the Namibian capital. I think it's Windhoek, it's pronounced. Interestingly enough, Namibia used to be a German colony. And you can also take a bus out to the coast here, to the Namib Desert. And the Namib Desert is fantastic. I think that's where Mad Max, the new Mad Max, was filmed. Yeah, it's got this incredible scenery. The desert is right by the ocean, and you'll see some photos of it. Just Google the Namib Desert, and it speaks for itself. And then finishing up in Cape Town here. Cape Town, you can do. Oh, I should mention though, in the Namib Desert, you can also skydive there. I did skydiving there, quad biking, sandboarding. There's actually loads to do there, and there's German beer halls. And it's a very interesting place, the least densely populated country in Africa, and quite well developed, actually. And to finish, I recommend Cape Town. Guys, Cape Town is my favorite city in all of Africa. When I went to Cape Town, it was the first place that I actually looked up real estate. I loved it so much. It was a beautiful city, really interesting mix of people as well. The whole scene there is just fantastic. And also what you can do there is dive with great white sharks, which is super badass. They put you in this cage, and what they do is they throw the chum out, and it's very dark under there, and they pull the chum in, and you're just looking at this black water, and all of a sudden these jaws just come at you and smack against the cage. Absolute wild. So this is a brilliant trip. Great contrast with waterfalls, deserts, city life. I would recommend this would be my number one in terms of experiential trip. This would be a great option. And also, if you did want to do the safaris like in Kenya, there's tons of options in South Africa. And also Botswana is right there as well. Botswana is very famous for its safaris and all that kind of thing. Okay, so they're the first main two trips I would recommend. And we'll get to questions very shortly, guys, by the way. And just here, I have another picture here. So this is Victoria Falls. Oh, incredible. I was there at sunset. My pictures are even better, I would say, of this. It was just incredible. This is the Namib Desert beside the ocean. This doesn't even do it justice. Google it yourself. You're going to get all sorts of incredible imagery. In fact, I'll probably Google it later on the stream just to show you guys. And this is just a view of Cape Town here. So other ideas. So apart from those two ideas, the best trip you could possibly do is to combine the two. Okay, so if I go back here, right? Here in Lusaka is the capital of Zambia. Great nightlife. I forgot to mention that. But see the first trip here. Dar es Salaam and Zanzibar. Mao, back in the 60s or 70s, I can't remember what decade, but he actually built a railway all the way from here, Dar es Salaam, to Lusaka, all across Africa, called the Tazara Railway. So you can actually travel by train all the way and combine this trip here, which is what I did. We went actually all the way from Cairo to Cape Town. So we went through the whole, from north to south, and that was just incredible, John. If you can combine the two, if you have the time, if you got like 2 months, 6 weeks, great idea. Ethiopia, my favorite country in Africa. If you had the option if you wanted to just do one country in depth, Ethiopia would be my choice. There's so much to see. For first timers, it can be a little intense, not in terms of safety, but the travel is quite intense. You could be 20 hours on a rickety bus. The infrastructure is not that great, but the food, the things to see. I think it has the most UNESCO heritage sites in all of Africa as well. Great variety. The people, the best looking girls in Africa as well. It's where coffee comes from. You got the rainforest. You got desert. I'm actually going to be releasing a video shortly about Ethiopia, so I cover that more in depth. So that's another recommendation for you. Carnival in Cape Verde. So Cape Verde are islands off the coast of West Africa, Portuguese and heritage. And they celebrate Carnival there, and it's supposed to be the biggest festival in Africa. So that's another great idea. And they're half caste, they're very good looking. It's a medium developed country. It's supposed to be a blast. Haven't been yet, but that could be another great idea if you only had like 1 to 2 weeks and you wanted to relax and get the island vibe. And then finally, I would consider the southeast. I've heard amazing things about Malawi, Mozambique, and Madagascar, and they're relatively safe countries. So that would be my recommendations. Okay, guys, I hope you like my presentation there. I'll go to questions now shortly. I don't have too long, but I'll try to answer as many as I can. I hope you like the fact that this stream was a bit more organized. I put together this this presentation for you, so I didn't want to just ramble like I do often on streams and just go from question to question on a tangent. So if we could please stick to questions on Africa if possible, although I will answer other questions. And yeah, let me help out. So I'm going to go through a few questions now and let's see. All right. So Find the Formula asks, were there any particular countries where you received hostility for your race, or was it pretty much always friendly? Okay, so good question. There are some racial tensions in some countries. The majority, no. Countries, I think Francophone countries tend to be friendlier in general than Anglophone countries. I think it's because the English-speaking countries get a bit too much influence from America and the whole race relations there. But that is only certain countries. For example, the only time I had issues were in where there was one place in particular where I had a run in. Oh no, I'm thinking of the Caribbean. Actually, Africa is much more chill than the Caribbean, by the way. Way more chill in terms of race relations. You get a little bit of animosity, maybe, or not animosity, but indifference in Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa. Obviously, South Africa, the history is terrible there, so there's really, really bad race relations. That would definitely be the worst, South Africa. But in the part of Cape Town where you'll be hanging out, guys, you won't be, let's say you won't be dealing with those race relations. You got people from all over. It's very cosmopolitan. Kenya, they're not, I wouldn't say they're racist, but they're not friendly in particular. They're just kind of neutral. I say that because when you compare them to the Tanzanians and the Ugandans, those people are so much warmer than the Kenyans. Nothing against Kenyans, but they don't have the same level of hospitality. And same with the Ethiopians to the north, they're much friendlier. I was in Somalia. I don't think it was hostility from my race. I think it was because I was a Westerner in general. But the Somalis were pretty friendly, but I definitely was just treated like an outsider. That's because I was the only non-Somali around there. Yeah, and otherwise, no. Generally, people are super, super friendly. Generally, the less tourists there are, the better reception you're going to get. You know, in Gambia and Senegal and Ghana, they're used to tourists, so you just kind of get kind of neutral responses. Worst case, you'll get a guys hassling you. Like in Ghana, if you go to the beach, you can get a lot of guys hustling you, like you would in Jamaica or somewhere, just because the tourists, and that's not cool. You know, it kind of annoys you. But hostility, no. Like compared to the Caribbean guys or the Americas, the Western Hemisphere, Africa is amazing. The people are great, and that's being truthful now. People are generally extremely wonderful over there. Yeah, pretty much always friendly. So. Next question. When is the best period to go weather-wise? Oh, I think a lot of it is it's like the Caribbean again. It doesn't really have summers and winters, with the exception of the extremities, like the northern part of Africa and South Africa. You know, it can get very cold, I know, in South Africa and Cape Town in our summertime, which is their wintertime. And there's all rainy seasons as well. But generally, the whole middle band, all of West Africa, it's good all times of the year. Same with Ethiopia. It can get a bit cold in Ethiopia, mind you, because it's quite north. But it's only the extremities, yeah, you have to worry about. Otherwise, it's pretty much good all year round. Okay, what up next? We got... how is the internet for digital nomad in Tanzania? Airbnb is pretty good. Wi-Fi is getting better and better. Obviously, it would depend on the Airbnb, but if you're in a city like Dar es Salaam, you're going to get Wi-Fi pretty much everywhere, and it's pretty good. I remember when I first went to Ethiopia, it was terrible. I mean, it was dial-up. But now, last time I went back I was getting high-speed internet and pretty much everywhere. And they're catching up. It's much better than expected. So not an issue if you're a digital nomad. But you need to be in cities in general, or a nice hotel. But you'd be surprised. Going to Nairobi next week. We'll put that on Facebook. Cheers, man. Enjoy yourself. Matt asks, what's the cost of living in these East African countries? Infrastructure. Oh, I think Matt might be getting a bit of jungle fever asking all these questions. You're on the way, man. Cost of living is very cheap. It depends on the country. Kenya is a bit more expensive. Uganda is very cheap. Ethiopia is very cheap. Tanzania it's Africa. In generally, it's pretty cheap. Although Eastern Europe is cheaper for drinking, for a lot of things. West Africa, I was surprised how expensive it was. Now that I think about it, I mean, the booze was cheap, but accommodation wasn't so cheap because it wasn't very set up for it didn't have a lot of tourist infrastructure. It really depends. It really depends on the country. I remember some places were surprisingly expensive, like Liberia and Congo and Somalia were way more expensive than I thought. But the likes of Ethiopia is peanuts. You'll live there forever for nothing. But if you're thinking about East Africa, Matt, Uganda, my number one choice by far. Just because, I said it, the people and the nightlife, and it has loads of stuff. It's great. Cheers, Mr. Mark. Cheers to you, sir. This is one of my favorite subjects. No one covers. Yeah, no one covers it. And by the way, guys, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do, because 91% of you haven't subscribed. So if you haven't, do click that subscribe button and hit the notifications bell so you don't miss any new videos. I don't know what made me think of that there, but yeah, if you do want to know more about Africa or travel for men in general, I said I have the biggest site online. I've doing this for 10 years. On the man, you need to talk to 110 countries. And I'm here to serve you guys. So I'm here to help. So do subscribe. Is it fine to walk around alone most of the time? Yep. With the exception of, I said, like the likes of like Lagos in Nigeria, Kinshasa in Congo, Cape Town or just anywhere in general in South Africa, Nairobi. You don't want to be walking at night on your own. But in most other capitals, I walked around at night with little issues. I mean, I have some stories. Don't get me wrong. I got some bad stories, but I know in the likes of South Africa, it's not a good idea. I know people who get mugged. There's a lot of gun crime there. Lagos is a zoo. Lagos is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. I mean, Lagos, even you could take all the precautions in the world and you're going to run into trouble in Lagos, Nigeria. I mean, anyone who's read my last book will know that was one of the closest I ever came to dying was on my trip there. But yeah, it is fine for most places. I said there's 54 countries in Africa. So the one thing that is shocking, and I forgot to mention this in the presentation, is how different each country is in Africa. You would be shocked, even just going to West Africa, where all these countries are in close proximity together, the variety and the difference going from one place to another, like from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana, right next door, couldn't be more different. And it's the same. I said that contrast I talked about earlier with Kenya and Uganda, right beside each other, incredibly different vibes. And Ethiopia is on another level. And so it really depends on the country. So take time to learn about the history and the tensions there, because some countries were, it's like a major tribe dominated, and there's a lot more unity in the country, and people are a lot friendlier. Whereas other countries were created with just arbitrary lines, and it's all these competing tribes that don't get along, and there's a lot more tension in the air. And then you have the likes of South Africa, of course. So it really depends on the country. It really depends. It's hard for me to give generic advice, but I have no problem walking alone at nighttime. I feel more comfortable most places in Africa than I would in the Caribbean or even parts of Latin America, because there's a lot more guns over there. There's not a lot of guns in Africa. Oh, unless you're in Somalia. Okay. Is there any particular safe advice at nighttime? Take taxis. If you're really scared about it, and if you're in a big city known for for trouble, just take taxis. And just the thing you got to be working out for, guys, is the girls. You got to be careful with the girls in Africa, because she'll say she likes you, and you think it's all good, and then you go home and maybe she asks for money, or she's looking to hustle you. The most dangerous thing in Africa is it's not wars, it's not bribery, and it's not disease. It's the chicks. So you've been warned here. You've been warned. Right? Are any outstanding STD issues? So HIV is more prevalent in the southern part of Africa. I'm talking South Africa. Botswana is the highest, I think. Formal Swaziland, whatever it's called, is Eswatini. These are the highest AIDS rates or HIV rates by far. But the further you get up north, the less of an issue it is. So West Africa is comparatively low, and like Ethiopia is comparatively low. I know Uganda have tackled their issues with safe sex and stuff like that. So it is improving. Check on a case-by-case basis, but generally the further south, the more issues you're going to have in general, if you look at the data. Okay. Yo, what's up, dude? Did you fix your boat? I might be going to Malta 2 weeks to get Schengen. How'd your situation? Yes, a little off topic, but no, I didn't fix the boat yet. Hopefully I'll get it sorted soon. Having issues with communication over in Sardinia, but we'll see. I'll catch up with you though. If you do come, get in touch. Okay. Want to be famous, but okay. We'll load it. Okay, I'm getting spam now. Goddamn. That wasn't it. All right, guys. Unless there's any more questions, hope you enjoyed this presentation. Hopefully, I'll be doing more live streams like this where it's a bit more structured. I can give a presentation, and then you guys can ask questions afterwards. If you guys want to get a better feel or want more African ideas, I've done a lot of posts on Africa. I've written dozens of city guides. A few things to check out is I did like the top 10 places to see in West Africa, my favorite top 10 destinations. That's on my blog, naughtynomad.com. Yes, so one second, I have it. Yes, naughtynomad.com. There it is. So I also have, I cover each country extensively, and I'd recommend also checking out my post on African girls. I think it's called Sex in Africa 101. It's like a survival guide, because the reality is in Africa, if you go out at nighttime, you meet girls at nighttime, you got to be careful. You got to be careful because it's not like normal places. It's just a different buzz over there. It's more an adventure. If you guys are just looking for have a good, clean fun, and you want it like perfectly safe and everything to be great, go to Europe, right? Or even Southeast Asia, because Africa is adventurous, guys. It is hardcore, and it does come with challenges. But you will have more stories from 1 month in Africa than you would 6 months in any other region of the world. I'm telling you, it's just an adventure. And it's my favorite continent. It's my favorite continent. I absolutely, goddamn, I love Africa. I love it. Yes. So also, yes, the usual. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Naughty Nomad. Shoot me questions there, guys, if you want to. I'll try to help out if I can. I think I got one more question here. It was great. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. One last question. I understand that Addis Ababa is relatively safe. Yes, it is. But the city is widespread. Any idea where in Addis to look? I would stay in Bole, around Bole Road. I would stay in Bole Road. That's kind of my go-to there. It's not so big. I mean, you can get taxis everywhere pretty cheap. So I said check out my Addis Ababa city guide. I'm also doing a video guide on Ethiopia very soon. All right, guys, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for everyone who asked questions, and I will catch you guys next time. Also, be sure to, if you're more interested in reading about Africa and my adventures, check out my book, Naughty Nomad, at naughtynomad.com. Also, Africa features very heavily in my last book, My Life as a Mexican Pirate. I'm sure most of you have read it, but if you haven't, do check it out. The reviews have been great, blah, 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 blah. Plug. Shill. Guys, enjoy your night. Enjoy your week. Take care. Yeah. And hopefully you can book a trip soon. Hopefully I've inspired some of you to take a more adventurous step with your travels and maybe